Hidden within the pages of forgotten history lies a mysterious work that was never included in the sacred scriptures. Yet it carries visions so powerful that they have continued to fascinate seekers of truth for centuries. This text is known as the Apocalypse of Abraham, a writing that reveals extraordinary encounters, cosmic struggles, and revelations that go far beyond the familiar stories many know about the patriarch. While Abraham is often remembered as the father of nations and a model of faith, here we see him stepping into a journey that unveils the very structure of heaven and the reality of a world divided between light and shadow. The time in which this text was written was filled with turmoil and searching. Jewish communities lived under foreign rule. The temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed, and many wrestled with questions about divine justice and the future of humanity. In such a climate, writings of an apocalyptic nature flourished, offering not just warnings, but glimpses into heavenly realities. The Apocalypse of Abraham belongs to this stream of thought, yet it dares to go further by portraying not a serene heaven, but a fractured one, scarred by conflict and rebellion. To read its words is to step into a vision that both inspires and unsettles. Abraham is not simply shown the glory of divine creation, but also the forces that seek to corrupt it. He is called away from the idols of his father, his house, and led into revelations that open his eyes to mysteries hidden from ordinary sight. His journey becomes a mirror for the human struggle itself, moving from the false security of lifeless gods toward the living truth of a universe filled with both beauty and danger. The very fact that this book was excluded from the biblical canon tells us something important. Its themes were considered too controversial, too difficult for religious authorities to endorse openly. A divided heaven, the shadow of Azazel, and visions of final judgment threatened to disrupt the carefully shaped teachings meant to guide communities in troubled times. Yet though silenced, the text survived, carried through centuries in obscure manuscripts until it resurfaced in modern times, still burning with mystery. For anyone who reads it today, the Apocalypse of Abraham offers more than a glimpse into the past. It challenges us to reflect on our own world, where light and darkness still clash and where questions of justice, faith, and truth remain as urgent as ever. Abraham's visions remind us that behind the visible world lies a deeper reality, one where divine mysteries continue to shape the destiny of creation. If you enjoy exploring these hidden writings and uncovering their meaning, make sure to subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us bring more fascinating content like this to life and continue exploring the mysteries of faith together. The Apocalypse of Abraham did not surface in the form of carefully preserved Hebrew or Greek manuscripts, as one might expect for a text of such antiquity. Instead, its survival is owed to a surprising source, the Slavic world. Preserved in Old Church Slavonic translations, the text traveled across lands and centuries in ways that remain somewhat mysterious, bypassing the mainstream currents of Jewish and Christian transmission. While many apocalyptic writings were lost completely, fading into silence, this one lingered on the fringes, tucked into collections where its voice remained faint but not extinguished. Its very survival feels like an act of defiance against the efforts to silence it. The obscurity of its preservation tells us something important. Canonical texts were copied, celebrated, and spread widely across communities. Those deemed heretical or threatening were hidden, burned, or quietly ignored. For the Apocalypse of Abraham to reach modern scholars, it had to slip past centuries of censorship carried by those who either did not recognize its controversial weight or who valued it enough to keep it alive in private hands. The fact that the text emerged through Slavic manuscripts centuries later reveals how the transmission of ancient works often depended on unlikely guardians in unexpected places. When modern scholars first encountered the Apocalypse of Abraham, they were struck by how it combined elements of familiar biblical traditions with radical and unsettling visions. Unlike other apocryphal writings that centered on human morality or law, this work plunged directly into cosmic mysteries. Its content immediately explained why it might have been sidelined. A divided heaven, the presence of an adversarial figure like Azazel, and the description of Abraham's mystical ascent did not align easily with the theological frameworks that Judaism and Christianity sought to uphold. This text also carried the weight of a forbidden label. To read it was to step into ideas that had been deemed dangerous, even destabilizing. For communities striving to uphold unity in their doctrines, a text suggesting a fractured heaven could not be tolerated. The religious leaders feared that such revelations might weaken faith or inspire teachings that could splinter their communities. Forbidden texts like this one became surrounded with an aura of secrecy, drawing curious minds who wondered what could be so threatening that it had to be hidden away. Over time, the Apocalypse of Abraham gained a reputation similar to other suppressed writings. It became grouped with works like the Book of Enoch, which also spoke of heavenly mysteries and fallen angels. Both texts painted vivid pictures of cosmic conflict, images that made religious leaders uneasy because they complicated the narrative of an orderly creation governed by one unchallenged power. The forbidden nature of these works did not make them less intriguing, it only deepened their mystery. Even today, to study the Apocalypse of Abraham is to confront not only its content, but also the story of its suppression. Why was it silenced? What voices decided it was too dangerous, too radical, or too revealing? Its absence from the canon is as much a part of its identity as its survival. Every time the text is opened, readers are reminded that they are engaging with words once considered unfit for the faithful, words deemed too provocative to be proclaimed openly. Yet the fascination persists. Scholars pore over its imagery, believers wrestle with its meaning, and seekers of truth find themselves drawn to the vision it offers. The Apocalypse of Abraham stands as a testament to the enduring human hunger for knowledge of the unseen, knowledge that does not always conform to the boundaries drawn by religious authorities. To unearth this forbidden text is to recover a voice that speaks across centuries, challenging and inspiring, unsettling yet illuminating. As Abraham's journey unfolds within its pages, the story moves beyond the mere survival of a manuscript into the realm of divine encounter. The opening vision of his calling takes us from the dusty world of idols and earthly corruption into the beginnings of a transformative revelation. The next step in this journey is the dramatic moment when Abraham himself is chosen, called away from his father's house, and set apart for a vision unlike any other. The Apocalypse of Abraham begins by grounding its story in the familiar figure of the patriarch. Long before he became known as the father of nations, Abraham was the son of terror, living in a household surrounded by idols. The text depicts this early environment with a striking sense of tension, a setting where Abraham's destiny was hidden beneath the weight of tradition and false worship. It is within this world that the divine voice interrupts his life, cutting through the noise of idolatry with a call that will alter the course of history. The calling of Abraham carries with it a deep sense of rupture. It is not a gentle transition, but a breaking away, a dramatic separation between the corruption of earthly practices and the purity of divine truth. Abraham is summoned to leave behind everything familiar, not just his family's religion, but the very foundation of his identity. The contrast is sharp and uncompromising, the lifeless idols of his father's house against the living God who now speaks to him. This moment is not simply about abandoning idolatry, it is about awakening to a higher reality. In the Apocalypse of Abraham, the calling takes on an apocalyptic weight. foreshadowing the revelations to come. Abraham is not merely a wanderer setting out on a new journey. He is chosen as a vessel for visions that pierce through the fabric of heaven itself. His faith becomes the gateway through which mysteries hidden from the world will be revealed. The dramatic tone of the calling emphasizes the divide between human corruption and divine revelation. Where others remain blind, Abraham's eyes are opened. Where others cling to the false security of idols, Abraham is willing to embrace the unknown. This act of trust becomes the foundation for the visions that follow, for only one willing to leave behind earthly corruption can be entrusted with the secrets of heaven. The text paints Abraham not as a distant hero, but as a man confronted with a choice that demands courage. His response to the divine summons is what sets him apart. He does not hesitate or argue. He steps forward, leaving behind a world defined by shadows in order to walk toward the light. This departure from the idols of his father's house is symbolic, not just of a personal journey, but of humanity's larger calling to turn from corruption and seek the truth. What makes the apocalypse of Abraham striking is how quickly the narrative shifts from earthly beginnings to the anticipation of cosmic revelations. The calling is only the beginning, yet it carries the weight of destiny. Every step Abraham takes away from his old life brings him closer to the extraordinary encounters that lie ahead. The tension between the corrupted earth and the holy mysteries of heaven begins here, at the threshold of his calling. Abraham's obedience is not just a personal virtue, but a necessity for the unfolding of the story. Without his willingness to leave, there could be no visions, no ascent, no revelations of heavenly conflict. The text suggests that divine mysteries are reserved for those willing to separate themselves from the world's corruption, to walk into the unknown with faith as their only guide. As the calling echoes in the story, Abraham is led toward encounters that will shake the foundations of his understanding. He is not left to walk alone. Soon, a celestial guide will descend to walk beside him, bridging the gap between humanity and heaven, and opening the way to revelations that cannot be borne by mortal strength alone. The appearance of the angel Yahuel marks a turning point in Abraham's journey. Until now, the call has come as a divine voice, drawing Abraham out of his old life. But now that calling takes on visible form in a celestial figure who comes down from heaven to guide him. Yahuel is no ordinary messenger. The text describes him as radiant and powerful, a being whose very presence commands reverence. His role is not just to deliver words, but to accompany Abraham into realms beyond human reach. Yahuel's name has sparked much discussion among scholars. Some see in him a parallel to the great archangel Michael, protector of Israel and warrior of heaven. Others view him as a unique figure, embodying aspects of both mediator and guardian. What is clear is that Yahuel represents a direct connection between God and Abraham, standing as the link through which visions of heaven can be safely conveyed. In the narrative, Yahuel's role is twofold. He is both protector and interpreter. The path Abraham is about to walk will lead into realms of fire, sacrifice, and cosmic revelation. Without a guide, the dangers would overwhelm him. Yahuel shields him from forces too great for a mortal to endure, while also interpreting the mysteries that unfold, explaining their meaning and preparing Abraham to receive what is shown. The angel's presence also carries symbolic weight. He embodies the idea that humanity cannot reach heaven on its own strength. Divine revelation requires mediation, a bridge between the infinite and the finite. Yahuel is that bridge, and his companionship reveals that Abraham's journey is not one of isolation, but of guided initiation. The way the text describes Yahuel emphasizes his closeness to the divine. His voice echoes with authority, his garments shine with glory, and his movements reflect heavenly order. To encounter such a being is to be reminded of the majesty of heaven itself. Yet his purpose is not to inspire awe alone, but to prepare Abraham for visions that would otherwise be unbearable. What makes Yahweh so striking is the balance he holds between accessibility and transcendence. He walks beside Abraham, yet he never ceases to be a figure of immense power. He speaks words of reassurance, yet every word carries the weight of heaven. His role reminds us that divine mysteries, while revealed, never lose their overwhelming majesty. The descent of Yahweh signals that Abraham is now stepping into a new phase of his journey. The earthly call has been answered, the idols left behind, and now the path into heavenly visions opens before him. With Yahweh at his side, Abraham is no longer a wanderer seeking truth. He becomes a participant in divine mysteries, guided step by step into revelations that few mortals have ever witnessed. Soon, this guidance will lead Abraham into an act of sacrifice that becomes the doorway to his apocalyptic visions. Fire, smoke, and blood will mark the threshold, transforming ritual into revelation and setting the stage for a vision of heaven unlike any other. The moment of sacrifice comes as both a test and a transition. Abraham is commanded to prepare a ritual offering, an act that echoes the ancient practices of his time, yet takes on an entirely new meaning within the apocalypse of Abraham. What seems at first like a traditional sacrifice soon becomes a gateway to revelation, where the smoke rising from the altar becomes the veil through which heavenly mysteries are unveiled. The imagery of fire and smoke fills this part of the narrative with intensity. Fire has always carried symbolic weight in sacred texts, representing purification, divine presence, and transformation. In this vision, the fire does not simply consume the sacrifice, it opens a path, as though the flames themselves tear open the barrier between earth and heaven. The smoke, curling upward, becomes a symbol of ascent, of prayers and mysteries rising beyond the reach of mortal sight. The animals chosen for the sacrifice recall covenantal traditions, where the cutting of flesh and the pouring out of blood marked binding agreements between God and humanity. Yet here the ritual is not just about covenant, but about revelation. Abraham is not only offering sacrifice, he is being prepared to enter into a vision that transcends ritual. The act of offering becomes the threshold, a passageway between the visible and the invisible. For Abraham, the sacrifice demands obedience and faith. He must prepare the animals, endure the sight of blood and fire, and stand before the altar with a heart willing to receive whatever comes next. His willingness to follow these instructions shows again the trust that defines his journey. Without such trust, he could not stand at the edge of revelation. The transformation of the ritual into a mystical doorway reflects a larger theme of the apocalypse of Abraham. The idea that earthly acts can carry cosmic significance. What might appear ordinary or even grim on the surface becomes charged with meaning when placed within the divine plan. Fire and smoke are no longer just physical phenomena, they become signs of heavenly reality breaking into the world. As the sacrifice burns, the atmosphere of the narrative shifts. The air grows heavy with expectation. The crackle of flames and the rising smoke mark not only the end of an offering but the beginning of revelation. It is through this fire that Abraham is drawn closer to the mysteries that await, his sacrifice becoming the price of entry into the apocalyptic vision. The covenantal overtones remain present, reminding the reader that what Abraham sees is not just for himself, but for all who come after him. His sacrifice prepares the way for insight into the nature of creation, rebellion, and divine justice. It is as if the fire on the altar reflects the fire of heaven, and the smoke rising to the sky mirrors Abraham's own coming ascent. The scene of sacrifice closes not with finality, but with anticipation. The flames still glow, the smoke still rises, and Abraham stands on the threshold of something far greater. What began as ritual has become revelation, and the next step will lift him beyond the earth itself, into a vision of heaven divided by conflict and filled with mysteries that shake the soul. As the fire of sacrifice dies down and the smoke coils upward into the vastness of the sky, Abraham is lifted into an experience unlike any he has ever known. His soul is drawn beyond the earth, carried upward by the power of the divine presence. What follows is not a vision rooted in imagination, but a full ascent into the layered heavens, each level revealing a dimension of reality hidden from the ordinary eye. The imagery of ascent in the Apocalypse of Abraham is striking. Abraham does not simply rise into the sky. He passes through firmaments, thresholds of creation that hold their own character and meaning. Each layer reflects an aspect of the cosmic order, revealing both harmony and conflict. The movement upward is filled with awe, for every step higher reveals new hosts of angels, radiant beings who fill the heavens with song and praise. Yet their presence is not always serene, for some appear as guardians of thresholds, their power fierce and untamed. The ascent emphasizes the contrast between the earthly and the heavenly. On earth, Abraham had left behind idols of stone and wood, lifeless objects incapable of speech or power. In the heavens, he now beholds living beings who embody light and order, beings who exist solely in service to the Creator. This shift is overwhelming, for the heavens are not a silent expanse, but a realm alive with voices, movement, and dazzling radiance. What is most striking in this ascent is that the heavens do not appear as a single, unified realm. Abraham begins to sense that the higher he goes, the more tension he perceives. The lower firmaments carry traces of corruption, as though rebellion has left scars even in the celestial realms. The divisions in heaven are not hidden. They are felt in the struggle between light and shadow, obedience and defiance. Abraham's awe grows with each step, but so does his awareness of the conflict embedded in the cosmos. This duality shapes the vision, reminding him that the heavenly order is not static but contested. It is not only the earth that suffers from corruption, even the heavens bear marks of division, a theme that unsettles as much as it inspires. Yahuel, ever present at his side, interprets what Abraham witnesses, assuring him that he is being shown truths hidden from most of humanity. The angel's guidance keeps Abraham steady, for without such mediation the overwhelming sights and sounds might crush him. Abraham's mortal nature is constantly at risk of faltering under the weight of the divine, yet Yahuel's presence shields him. The vision of ascent reaches a climax as Abraham beholds the majesty of higher heavens, where divine order shines more purely, yet even here the reminder of struggle remains. He sees thrones of glory, angelic choirs, and radiant light, but he also perceives boundaries where light meets darkness, where harmony confronts discord. Heaven itself is portrayed not as a final rest, but as a battleground of cosmic proportions. This ascent sets the stage for what is to come, for Abraham is not simply shown beauty, but conflict. His journey through the heavens reveals that the story of creation is not one of effortless peace, but of ongoing struggle between forces of light and those that seek to corrupt. It is in this context that Abraham will soon behold a vision of a divided heaven, a kingdom torn apart, and a revelation that shakes the very notion of divine order. As Abraham continues his ascent, he is shown the central vision that makes the Apocalypse of Abraham so controversial and so powerful. Before him stretches a picture of heaven not unified, but fractured. The celestial kingdom itself appears torn, with one part radiant in light and another overshadowed by darkness. The sight challenges the assumption that heaven is untouched by strife, revealing instead a realm where conflict and rebellion have taken root. The imagery of this division is vivid, On one side, Abraham beholds angelic hosts clothed in glory, their faces shining, their voices lifted in eternal praise. On the other, he perceives shadows and distorted figures, beings that once belonged to light but have turned away. The contrast between the two realms is stark, like day and night sharing the same sky. This division is not symbolic alone, it is presented as a reality Abraham is being made to witness. The fractured kingdom is populated by more than just angels, loyal to the Creator. Abraham sees fallen beings who carry the marks of rebellion. They are not mere abstractions of evil, but active forces seeking to exert dominion. Their presence in the heavenly vision reveals a truth rarely spoken openly, that the struggle between light and darkness is not confined to earth, but extends into the very fabric of the heavens themselves. This portrayal resonates with other apocalyptic traditions, such as the Book of Enoch, with its tales of the Watchers, or the Revelation of John, with its imagery of war in heaven. Yet the apocalypse of Abraham offers its own unique emphasis. It is not only a past rebellion that Abraham sees, but an ongoing struggle, a present division that defines the cosmic order. Heaven is not merely the place of God's throne, it is a kingdom under siege, contested by forces that refuse to submit. Abraham's reaction is one of awe and dread. To see heaven divided shakes the very foundation of belief, for if the heavenly realm itself is fractured, what hope remains for earth? Yahweh reassures him that what he sees is part of the divine plan, a revelation of the depth of rebellion and the endurance of divine justice. The conflict does not mean God is absent, but that his will is revealed even in the midst of cosmic struggle. The imagery of a divided heaven also reflects the human condition. Just as Abraham sees light and darkness above, so too humanity is torn between faith and corruption, obedience and rebellion. The division in heaven mirrors the division in the human heart, reminding Abraham that the battle he beholds is not distant but intimately connected to the destiny of mankind. This vision would have been considered highly provocative. To admit that heaven itself was fractured risked undermining the confidence of believers who sought assurance in a perfect and orderly divine realm. Yet, for those who experienced suffering and persecution, this revelation might have offered a strange form of comfort, affirming that their struggles mirrored a greater cosmic reality. As Abraham stands within this vision, he realizes that his calling is not simply to leave behind idols, but to perceive the vastness of divine mystery. The heavens are not simple, they are layered with beauty and shadow, unity and division, promise and peril. His journey into the divided kingdom above prepares him for an even darker revelation, one that will take shape in the figure of Azazel, the embodiment of corruption and the adversary of all that is holy. Into the vision of a divided heaven comes a figure who embodies the very essence of rebellion. Abraham is shown Azazel, a being of terrifying presence, often associated with the scapegoat ritual of Israel's tradition, but here revealed in his true form as a tempter and corrupter. He appears not as an abstract idea, but as a tangible force, taking the shape of a serpent whose shadow stretches across the earth. The serpent imagery recalls the ancient story of Eden, where humanity's fall began through deception. Azazel carries that same essence of corruption, his form both alluring and dreadful, drawing the gaze yet filling it with fear. He claims dominion over the earthly realm, presenting himself as ruler of all that is tainted and corrupt. His shadow spreads across nations, binding them in idolatry, violence and sin. The dialogue between Abraham and Azazel is striking. Azazel does not simply lurk in silence, he speaks boldly, declaring his power over the earthly domain. His words are filled with pride and defiance, as though he seeks to assert equality with the divine. For Abraham, the encounter is chilling, a confrontation with the embodiment of everything he has left behind, the idols, the corruption, the false worship. Yet here, those forces take living form in the figure of Azazel. Yahweh's presence is crucial at this moment, for the angel restrains Azazel's reach and reminds Abraham that his dominion is temporary and limited. Still, the vision leaves no doubt of the adversary's influence. Humanity is caught in his shadow, tempted and ensnared, struggling against a power that reaches beyond earth into the very structure of heaven. The scapegoat ritual of Israel resonates in this vision. In the ancient ceremony, one goat was sacrificed, while another, bearing the sins of the people, was cast into the wilderness to Azazel. Here that ritual is revealed in cosmic imagery. Azazel is not a distant symbol, but an active being, claiming the sins of humanity and seeking to wield them as power. The ritual now appears as a reflection of the deeper cosmic struggle Abraham witnesses. The vision of Azazel highlights the tension between divine sovereignty and rebellious power. Though his shadow spreads wide, it is not eternal. He is revealed as both powerful and limited, a corrupter, but not a creator. His presence magnifies the glory of God by contrast, showing that even in the darkest shadow, divine justice holds firm. Abraham's encounter with Azazel deepens the weight of his vision. He sees not only the majesty of heaven and the beauty of angelic hosts, but the reality of opposition that pervades creation. This duality intensifies the urgency of his calling, reminding him that faith is not lived in ease, but in the midst of struggle against a cosmic adversary. With the serpent's shadow still lingering in his vision, Abraham is prepared to witness even greater mysteries. He will be shown the secrets of creation itself and the destiny of the world, revelations that stretch from the beginning of time to its final judgment. The vision now widens to embrace the entire sweep of history. Abraham is granted a glimpse into the mysteries of creation, seeing the world as it unfolded under the hand of the Creator. He perceives the order of the cosmos, the separation of light from darkness, the shaping of earth and heavens, the birth of humanity from the dust. This is not a detached account, but a living revelation where creation itself appears as a majestic act of divine will. The secrets of creation are not revealed to Abraham simply as history, but as prophecy, for in the same vision he sees the corruption of humanity. He beholds the fall into sin, the spread of violence, and the rise of nations consumed by pride and idolatry. What was created in beauty becomes tainted, mirroring the heavenly division he has already witnessed. The vision of creation and corruption binds together heaven and earth in a shared struggle. Abraham is also shown the unfolding of time, a panorama of human history stretching toward its destined conclusion. He sees kingdoms rise and fall, rulers who exalt themselves and then collapse into ruin. The vision presents history not as random events, but as a stage upon which the conflict between divine order and rebellious power plays out. Every empire, every act of violence, every moment of faith or betrayal becomes part of this cosmic drama. The most striking part of this revelation is the glimpse of the final judgment. Abraham sees the moment when corruption will be brought to account, when those who have walked in rebellion will face divine justice. The imagery is vivid, portraying fire that consumes wickedness and light that purifies creation. This vision carries both dread and hope, for it reveals not only the end of evil, but the triumph of divine justice. In these revelations, Abraham perceives the destiny of humanity as inseparable from the destiny of heaven. The division above and the corruption below are intertwined, each reflecting the other, and both moving toward a final resolution. The secrets of creation and the vision of the end reveal that history itself is a journey toward restoration, though not without cost. What Abraham is shown would have been overwhelming to any mortal. The vast sweep of time, the rise and fall of nations, the final judgment of all creation, such visions stretch beyond the capacity of human thought. Yet Abraham is entrusted with these revelations, chosen to bear witness to mysteries that lie hidden from most of humanity. The Apocalypse of Abraham presents this vision not as comfort alone, but as a warning. To see creation's beauty and corruption side by side is to recognize the gravity of human choice. To glimpse the end is to feel the urgency of faith, for the final judgment will not be delayed forever. As the vision closes, Abraham is left with the weight of what he has seen. He now carries the knowledge of creation, corruption, and destiny, a knowledge that reveals both the majesty of divine justice and the depth of cosmic struggle. His journey is not finished, for the question of why this vision was silenced and what it means for generations to come still lingers, waiting to be explored. The Apocalypse of Abraham raises immediate questions about its exclusion from sacred canon. When we consider its themes, visions of a fractured heaven, the figure of Azazel, and revelations of creation and final judgment, it becomes clearer why religious authorities might have found it too controversial to preserve alongside accepted scriptures. The guardians of tradition sought unity and clarity, but this text unsettled both with imagery that blurred the line between divine order and cosmic conflict. One of the primary reasons for its suppression likely lies in its portrayal of heaven itself. The mainstream theological vision emphasizes a perfect, harmonious dwelling of God, untouched by strife. Yet this writing dares to reveal heaven as divided, scarred by rebellion, and contested by fallen powers. Such an idea could shake the confidence of the faithful, for if heaven itself is fractured, how secure can earth be? Leaders who work to stabilize communities under pressure may have feared that such imagery would only deepen anxiety and doubt. The role of Azazel also added to the controversy. Unlike Satan in later Christian texts, Azazel here takes on a distinct and unsettling position. He is not just a distant adversary. He actively claims dominion over the earth and confronts Abraham directly. His presence in the narrative suggests that evil is not merely a human failing, but a cosmic force woven into the very structure of creation. To include such a figure in sacred scripture would mean acknowledging a rival power with influence reaching into both heaven and earth, a truth that many would have considered too dangerous to proclaim openly. Beyond the theological tension, there were political dimensions to consider. During the centuries when the biblical canon was being shaped, religious authorities faced enormous pressure to present a unified front. Judaism struggled to maintain its identity under Roman rule, while early Christianity sought to define its message in the face of persecution and internal division. A text like the Apocalypse of Abraham, with its radical visions and unsettling themes, risked introducing division where unity was needed most. The exclusion of the text also reflects broader patterns in how certain writings were handled. Other apocalyptic works, such as the Book of Enoch, shared a similar fate. Their vivid depictions of angelic rebellions, cosmic battles, and divine secrets were embraced by some, but rejected by others, who feared that such revelations strayed too far from the secure boundaries of law and covenant. In many ways, the Apocalypse of Abraham found itself in the same category, fascinating but too dangerous to canonize. For those who controlled the canon, the challenge was not simply about accuracy, but about influence. Which texts would shape the hearts and minds of believers for generations to come? The Apocalypse of Abraham, with its complex visions and unsettling revelations, may have been deemed too destabilizing to guide the faith of ordinary people. Instead, it was left in the shadows, preserved only in obscure manuscripts and removed from the public life of worship. Yet the very act of silencing the text testifies to its power. Authorities rarely suppress what is harmless. They suppress what has the potential to challenge, to disrupt, to provoke new ways of seeing. The Apocalypse of Abraham was not ignored because it lacked significance, but because it carried truths that could not be easily controlled. Its survival, though hidden, suggests that there were always those who valued its message enough to keep it alive, even if in secrecy. By asking why it was silenced, we uncover more than a historical fact. We discover the boundaries of acceptable belief, the fears of religious leaders, and the ways in which revelation can be both a gift and a threat. The Apocalypse of Abraham sits at the edge of these boundaries, offering visions that continue to disturb and inspire. And though it was excluded from canon, its influence has not been extinguished, echoing in traditions that followed and leaving traces in mystical thought across centuries. Though suppressed, the Apocalypse of Abraham did not vanish without leaving a mark. Its themes, images, and visions found resonance in later writings and traditions, suggesting that its voice continued to echo in ways both subtle and profound. When we trace the history of apocalyptic thought, we find patterns and ideas that bear remarkable similarity to what Abraham is shown in this forbidden text. One of the clearest connections lies in the motif of heavenly division and angelic rebellion. This theme surfaces in Christian writings, most notably in the Book of Revelation, where a war in heaven is described and the dragon is cast down with his angels. The Apocalypse of Abraham had already depicted a fractured heaven where fallen beings contested divine order, and it is difficult not to see a shared imagination at work. Whether directly or indirectly, the vision of a divided heaven resonates through later apocalyptic thought. The figure of Azazel also casts a long shadow. Though not always mentioned by name, his role as corrupter and adversary reappears in different guises. In Christian theology, the figure of Satan takes on similar characteristics, claiming dominion over the world and acting as tempter and deceiver. In Jewish mystical traditions, Azazel is remembered as a fallen angel tied to the scapegoat ritual, a symbol of sin and exile. The Apocalypse of Abraham offers one of the most vivid portrayals of his presence, and its influence can be felt in how later traditions understood the power of evil. The ascent of Abraham through the heavens likewise echoes in mystical writings that emerged in later centuries. Jewish Merkabah mysticism, with its emphasis on visionary ascents through the heavenly palaces, carries striking parallels to Abraham's journey guided by Yahoel. Early Christian mystics also described visions of layered heavens, angelic hosts, and divine thrones, imagery that aligns with what the Apocalypse of Abraham revealed. These similarities suggest that, even if the text itself was hidden, its spirit found expression in other writings. Gnostic traditions, with their fascination for secret knowledge and cosmic struggle, also seem to reflect the same currents of thought. The idea that creation itself was marred by conflict, that hidden powers sought to enslave humanity, and that divine revelation was the key to liberation. All these themes resonate with what Abraham was shown. While not directly quoting the Apocalypse of Abraham, such traditions carry the same undertones of a divided cosmos and the need for visionary knowledge. The echoes extend even into later Christian theology, where debates about angelic hierarchies, the nature of evil, and the final judgment often drew upon imagery first explored in apocalyptic texts. The Apocalypse of Abraham may not have been canonized, but its vision of heaven torn by struggle and of a tempter claiming dominion contributed to the larger framework through which later thinkers wrestled with these questions. What makes these echoes so powerful is that they reveal the enduring relevance of the themes. Humanity has always struggled to understand the presence of evil, the mystery of suffering, and the hope of divine justice. The Apocalypse of Abraham addressed these questions in ways that resonated deeply, And though it was silenced in official contexts, it continued to speak through the undercurrents of mystical and apocalyptic thought. By tracing these echoes, we see that the text was never truly lost. Its imagery of ascent, its portrayal of a divided heaven, and its vision of cosmic conflict became part of the shared imagination of later generations. The voices that sought to silence it could not erase its influence, for its themes were too compelling, too deeply connected to humanity's longing to understand the mysteries of creation and destiny. The Apocalypse of Abraham may remain outside the canon, but its legacy endures in the writings, visions, and traditions that followed. Its echoes remind us that truth, once spoken, rarely disappears completely, even when hidden. Instead, it weaves itself into the fabric of thought and belief, shaping the way generations to come imagine the struggle between light and darkness, the power of faith, and the mysteries of heaven itself. The Apocalypse of Abraham, though written in a distant time and preserved in obscure manuscripts, still speaks with remarkable power to the present age. Its visions of a divided heaven and a world shadowed by corruption may sound ancient, yet they resonate with the struggles of humanity today. The sense of living in a fractured world where forces of good and evil contend in every sphere of life is as real now as it was in the time of Abraham. The text reminds us that faith is never lived in ease or simplicity. Abraham's calling was not into comfort, but into a journey filled with mystery, awe, and struggle. He was asked to leave behind the idols of his culture, to embrace the unknown, and to trust in revelations that unsettled as much as they inspired. In a modern context, the same challenge stands before us. To walk in faith often means to let go of what is false, to resist the shadows of corruption, and to believe that the unseen reality of divine justice will prevail. The vision of a divided heaven also speaks directly to the complexity of human life. Just as Abraham witnessed light and darkness contending in the highest realms, we too experience that struggle in our world and within our own hearts. The text does not offer simplistic answers, but acknowledges the depth of the conflict. This honesty makes it timeless, for it reflects the very struggles that define human existence across generations. The figure of Azazel, with his shadow cast across the earth, offers a striking picture of temptation and corruption. Though we may not speak of him directly in everyday language, the forces he represents are visible in greed, violence, injustice, and the countless ways humanity turns away from the light. Recognizing his presence in Abraham's vision reminds us that evil is not a distant myth, but a reality we confront daily. Yet the text does not leave us in despair. It shows that even Azazel's dominion is limited and that divine justice holds ultimate authority. The secrets of creation and the glimpse of final judgment given to Abraham remind us that history is not random. Even in chaos, there is movement toward restoration, a promise that corruption will not have the last word. For a world weary of conflict and uncertainty, this message continues to inspire hope. It affirms that human choices matter, that faith is meaningful, and that the struggle between light and darkness will one day reach its resolution. What makes the Apocalypse of Abraham especially relevant today is its courage to embrace both awe and dread. It does not present faith as escape from struggle, but as endurance through it. Abraham's visions were not given to comfort him alone, but to strengthen him with truth, however unsettling it might be. In our own time, where many search for meaning in the midst of confusion, this ancient voice still calls with clarity. The journey of faith is costly, but it leads into mysteries that surpass imagination. Though it was silenced in official traditions, its survival across centuries reminds us that truth cannot be fully buried. Hidden texts, forbidden writings, and suppressed voices often carry insights too powerful to vanish completely. The Apocalypse of Abraham stands as a testament to the resilience of revelation, speaking across generations and refusing to be forgotten. For those who seek understanding today, the message remains clear. We live in a divided world, caught between shadow and light, yet called to rise above, to seek the truth, and to trust that the God who revealed creation to Abraham still governs the destiny of all things. The struggle continues, but so does the promise. The ancient vision of a fractured heaven still echoes as a reminder that our lives are part of a cosmic story far greater than ourselves. Thank you for joining this journey through the hidden visions of the apocalypse of Abraham. If this exploration has inspired you, challenged you, or given you something new to reflect on, I invite you to support this channel. Subscribe so you do not miss future content. Give this video a like to help it reach more viewers. Leave a comment with your thoughts or questions, and share this video with your friends and family so they too can discover these ancient and powerful revelations. Your support helps this community grow and continue exploring the deep mysteries of faith and history together.